I'm Maeve Caldwell, 32, and I never thought I'd be the one to destroy my family's reputation in our small Connecticut town. But when I discovered my parents had secretly used my identity to secure loans for my gambling-addicted brother, ruining my credit score, and dreams of starting my own business, I realized blood loyalty has its limits. 3 months after my revenge plan unfolded, my parents lost their social standing, my brother's in rehab, and I'm finally free. Before I dive into how my picture-perfect family imploded, I'd love to know where you're watching from. Drop your location in the comments below, and don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe if you enjoy family revenge drama. Trust me, you'll want to stick around to see how karma finally caught up to the people who were supposed to protect me but chose to sacrifice me instead. Growing up in Ridgefield, Connecticut, the Caldwells were the embodiment of the American dream. My father, Richard, was a respected cardiothoracic surgeon at Danbury Hospital, while my mother, Eleanor, served as the chairwoman of multiple charity organizations. Our colonial-style home hosted countless fundraisers and holiday parties that were the talk of the town. To outsiders, we represented success, community service, and family values. I was the middle child sandwiched between my older brother Tyler and younger sister Abigail. Tyler was the golden child, charismatic, athletic, and seemingly destined for greatness. He followed in our father's footsteps and attended Yale Medical School, much to our parents' delight. Abigail, the baby of the family, became a concert pianist who traveled internationally by the age of 16. Then there was me, Maeve, the responsible one. I excelled academically, but never quite reached the dazzling heights of my siblings' accomplishments. While I graduated with honors from Boston University, with a degree in business management, my achievements always seemed muted in comparison to my siblings' more glamorous pursuits. Maeve is our rock, my mother would say, at family gatherings, a compliment that felt more like being relegated to the role of supporting character in my own life. Despite this dynamic, I carved out my own path. After college, I worked at a prestigious marketing firm in Boston, saving meticulously for 5 years with the dream of opening my own boutique marketing agency, specializing in sustainable businesses. By 30, I had accumulated nearly $75, 0 inches savings, and maintained an impeccable credit score of 820. My business plan was solid, and I had already secured interest from potential clients who believed in my vision. What I didn't know was that while I was building my future brick by brick, Tyler's life was crumbling behind the scenes. The golden boy had developed a severe gambling addiction during medical school, something my parents had kept hidden from me and Abigail. His residency at a prestigious hospital in Chicago had been jeopardized multiple times due to his absences and erratic behavior, but my parents had pulled strings and made donations to keep him afloat. Each family holiday, Tyler would return home with expensive gifts and stories of medical triumph. I never questioned how a resident physician could afford such lavish presents or why he seemed increasingly anxious and disappeared for hours during family events. My parents expertly maintained the facade, bragging about Tyler's accomplishments while subtly steering conversations away from any topics that might expose the truth. "Your brother works so hard," my father would say. "The pressure of saving lives takes a toll." I believed them completely, even defending Tyler when my sister Abigail once mentioned that she thought something seemed off about him during Christmas dinner. "He's just tired," I insisted. "Residency is brutal." Little did I know that on that very Christmas, while we were exchanging gifts and sipping eggnog, Tyler had just lost $50,000 at an underground poker game and was being threatened by loan sharks. My parents had secretly wired him the money the next day, draining a significant portion of their retirement fund. The perfect Caldwell family image remained intact for the outside world, but beneath the surface, cracks were forming. My mother began drinking more heavily, though she hid it well behind her perpetual smile and immaculate appearance. My father developed insomnia and started making uncharacteristic mistakes at the hospital, which he attributed to age. I remained oblivious to it all, focused on my own goals and buying into the narrative I'd been fed my entire life. I trusted my family implicitly. When my parents suggested I open a joint investment account with them for tax purposes when I was 28, I didn't think twice. When they asked to use my address for some confidential hospital correspondence my father couldn't receive at home, I readily agreed. These seemingly innocent requests were the first threads in a web of deceit that would eventually entangle me. As I continued building my dream in Boston, completely unaware of the storm brewing, my parents and brother were making decisions that would devastate my life and shatter our family forever. The last normal conversation I had with my parents was during a weekend visit home, just 3 months before everything fell apart. We sat on the back porch overlooking the garden. My mother meticulously maintained drinking lemonade and discussing my business plans. "We're so proud of you, Maeve," my mother said, reaching for my hand. "You've always been so responsible." My father nodded in agreement. The most level-headed of all our children. I basked in their rare praise, never suspecting that their compliments were laced with guilt, and that being the responsible one had made me the perfect target for their desperate scheme to save Tyler, a scheme I was about to discover in the most devastating way possible. The day my world collapsed began like any other Tuesday. I had scheduled a meeting with a loan officer at First National Bank to discuss financing options for my new marketing agency. With my excellent credit history and substantial savings, I anticipated a smooth process. I dressed in my most professional navy blue suit, prepared a comprehensive business plan, and arrived 15 minutes early, confident and excited about taking this crucial step toward my dream. The loan officer, Mr. Peterson, greeted me with a warm smile that quickly faded as he reviewed my file on his computer. His brow furrowed, and he adjusted his glasses, looking increasingly uncomfortable. "Miss Caldwell, there seems to be some discrepancy here," he said cautiously. "What kind of discrepancy?" I asked, my stomach tightening with inexplicable dread. "According to our records, you currently have 3 outstanding loans, totaling approximately $215,000. Your credit score is..." He paused, clearing his throat, "currently 540, which unfortunately falls below our minimum requirement for business loans." The room seemed to tilt. "That's impossible," I whispered. "I have no loans. My credit score was 820 last month when I checked it." Mr. Peterson turned his monitor toward me, revealing a screen full of red flags and debt notifications. I stared at the list of loans I'd supposedly taken out over the past 2 years. A $75,000 personal loan, an $85,000 home equity line of credit on a property I didn't own, and a $55,000 auto loan for a luxury vehicle I'd never seen. There must be some mistake, I insisted, my voice rising. This is identity theft. The next 48 hours became a blur of panicked phone calls, credit bureau disputes, and sleepless nights. I filed a police report and hired a financial forensic specialist who traced the paper trail. What he discovered left me numb with shock and betrayal. All 3 loans had been taken out using my social security number and personal information, but the documentation bore subtle clues that pointed to my parents' involvement. The signature on the loan applications resembled mine but had distinctive differences, characteristics that matched my mother's handwriting. The phone number listed for verification calls was my father's cell. The joint investment account I'd agreed to open years earlier had been used to establish credibility for the fraudulent applications. Most damning of all, the money from these loans had been systematically transferred to accounts belonging to Tyler and my parents. The auto loan had purchased a Mercedes that Tyler now drove. The home equity line was drawn against my parents' vacation property in Vermont using my name as a co-owner, something I never agreed to. The personal loan had been withdrawn in cash increments just under $10,000, a clear attempt to avoid banking scrutiny. When confronted with this evidence, my financial investigator looked at me sympathetically. Miss Caldwell, I hate to say this, but this isn't random identity theft. This was orchestrated by someone with intimate knowledge of your personal information and access to your documents, someone close to you. The truth crashed down on me with crushing force. My own parents had committed fraud using my identity to bail out Tyler from his gambling debts. They had sacrificed my financial future, my business dreams, and my trust without a second thought. I sat in my apartment that night surrounded by financial statements and loan documents trying to make sense of such profound betrayal. How could the people who raised me, who taught me values like honesty and responsibility, have done something so deceitful? The perfect family image I had believed in my entire life, shattered into 1,000 painful shards. With shaking hands, I called my father's cell phone. When he answered with his usual cheerful, "Hello, sweetheart," something inside me broke. "How could you?" I whispered, my voice trembling with rage and heartbreak. "How could you and Mom do this to me?" A long silence followed, then a heavy sigh that contained no surprise, only resignation. He knew he'd been caught. "Maeve, you need to understand." He began, his doctor's voice calm and reasonable. Tyler was in trouble. Serious trouble. These weren't normal gambling debts he owed money to dangerous people. They were threatening him. "What were we supposed to do, let our son get hurt, so you decided to hurt me instead?" I asked incredulously. "We didn't think of it that way," my father replied, his tone defensive. "We planned to pay everything back before you ever found out. Tyler is getting help now. He's in a treatment program. Once he recovers, he'll resume his medical career and help repay everything. Your credit can be fixed. We're family, Maeve. Family protects each other. Family doesn't commit fraud against each other." I countered, tears streaming down my face. "You've destroyed everything I've worked for. My business loan was denied. My savings are gone, trying to untangle this mess. How am I supposed to trust any of you ever again? Your brother would have been killed, Maeve," my father snapped, finally losing his composure. "What would you have done? Sometimes in life you have to make impossible choices. You could have told me the truth," I said quietly. "You could have asked for my help. Instead, you chose to steal my identity and ruin my life." I heard my mother's voice in the background asking what was happening, followed by my father's muffled explanation. Then, she was on the phone crying and making excuses, insisting they had no choice, that they would make it right. But their promises rang hollow. The damage was done not just to my finances, but to the very foundation of trust between us. As I listened to their justifications, a cold realization settled over me. In their family hierarchy, I was expendable. My dreams and financial security were acceptable collateral damage to save the golden child. That night, after ending the call with no resolution, I made a decision. I would not be their victim or their scapegoat. I would not quietly absorb this betrayal for the sake of family peace. The responsible, reliable Maeve they had counted on and taken advantage of was gone. In her place stood someone new, a woman determined to ensure that those who had betrayed her would face the consequences of their actions, no matter the cost. 3 days after discovering my parents' betrayal, I sat across from Diane Rivera, a stern-faced attorney specializing in identity theft and financial fraud. Her office, with its minimalist furniture and walls lined with legal certificates, felt like neutral ground, a place where my emotional turmoil could be channeled into rational action. "Let me be clear, Miss Caldwell," Diane said, pushing her glasses up her nose as she reviewed the documents spread before her. "What your parents and brother did is unequivocally criminal. Identity theft, fraud, forgery, these are serious federal offenses that carry potential prison sentences. The word prison made my stomach lurch. Despite everything, the thought of my aging parents in jail cells made me physically ill. I understand that, I replied, twisting the tissue in my hands. But they're still my family. I want justice, not vengeance. I want my financial life restored and them to understand the gravity of what they've done. Diane leaned back in her chair, studying me intently. Family fraud cases are among the most complex I handle, not legally but emotionally. You're caught in a terrible position. But I need to ask you something important. If your parents were strangers who had stolen your identity and $215,000, what would you want to happen to them? The question crystallized something inside me. I'd want them prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law, I admitted. Then why should your parents be treated differently? She challenged. Because they raised you, does that give them the right to destroy your future? I had no answer. Here's what typically happens in these cases, Diane continued, her tone softening slightly. Most victims of familial identity theft ultimately decide not to press charges because of emotional ties. They accept partial repayment plans that often fall through. They suffer in silence while watching their credit scores remain damaged for years. And statistically, over 60% of these perpetrators go on to commit similar frauds against other family members or friends. She let that sink in before adding, your brother's gambling addiction isn't going to disappear overnight. Treatment helps, but relapse rates are high. Without serious consequences, this cycle may continue. For the next 2 hours, Diane outlined my options. I could file criminal charges, pursue civil litigation, or attempt to negotiate restitution privately. Each path had its own complicated ramifications for my family relationships and my financial recovery. As I left her office, the weight of my decision felt crushing. I walked through the city streets aimlessly, watching families go about their normal lives, parents holding children's hands, siblings laughing together, everyday scenes that now felt like artifacts from a life I'd lost. My phone buzzed incessantly with texts and calls from my parents, and even Tyler, who had apparently been granted phone privileges at his rehabilitation facility. I ignored them all, needing space to think clearly, without their justifications and emotional manipulation. That evening, I called the one person who might understand: my younger sister, Abigail. Currently on tour in Europe with her orchestra, she had always been somewhat removed from family dynamics due to her traveling career. Abby, I said when she answered, my voice breaking. Everything's falling apart here. Over the next hour, I explained the situation. Her initial disbelief gave way to horror, then a quiet anger I'd never heard from my usually gentle sister. I suspected something was wrong with Tyler, but this, using your identity, that's unforgivable, she said. What are you going to do? I don't know, I confessed. Part of me wants to just walk away from all of them, start over somewhere new. Another part wants to fight to make them face what they've done. And despite everything, a small part still loves them and worries about what criminal charges would do to our family. Abigail was silent for a moment. Maeve, remember when we were kids, and I wanted to quit piano because that mean teacher made me cry. You told me something I've never forgotten. You said sometimes the hardest path is the right one. Her words echoed through me, stirring something resolute. I think, Abigail continued carefully, that our parents have taken advantage of your kind heart and sense of responsibility for too long. Whatever you decide, I'll support you completely. But please don't sacrifice yourself for this twisted definition of family loyalty they've created. After we hung up, I stood at my apartment window watching the city lights flicker on as dusk settled. The life I'd carefully planned was in shambles, but I was still standing. My identity, my true identity, beyond paperwork and credit scores, remained mine. I thought about all the times I'd played by the rules, been the dependable daughter, the one who never caused trouble. How that very quality had made me the perfect target for exploitation by the people who should have protected me. In that moment, I made my decision. I would not press criminal charges immediately, that nuclear option would remain in reserve, but I wouldn't roll over either. I would pursue a path that ensured three things: complete restoration of my finances, genuine accountability from my family, and protection from any similar betrayals in the future. I opened my laptop and began to write a detailed email to Diane outlining my chosen strategy. It would be methodical, measured, and designed to give my family one chance, but only one, to make things right. What I didn't yet realize was that my definition of making things right had fundamentally changed. It was no longer just about the money. It was about dismantling the false family narrative we'd lived under for decades. It was about truth, painful as it might be. The perfect Caldwell family was about to face a reckoning orchestrated by the very daughter they had underestimated. 2 weeks after my meeting with Diane, I returned to Ridgefield for the first time since discovering my parents' betrayal. The familiar tree-lined streets and colonial homes that once represented comfort now felt like the setting of an elaborate lie. I checked into the small boutique hotel downtown rather than staying at my childhood home, a decision that prompted a flurry of hurt messages from my mother, which I ignored. The meeting was set for Saturday morning in my parents' living room. My terms had been clear: Tyler must be present, even if it meant a temporary leave from his rehabilitation program. No other family, friends, or relatives would be involved. And most importantly, they would listen to everything I had to say without interruption before responding. When I arrived at the house, the tension was palpable. My mother had clearly been crying, her usually perfect makeup slightly smudged. My father looked older than I, remembered the lines around his mouth, deeper, his shoulders slightly stooped. Tyler sat on the edge of the sofa, pale and twitchy, his designer clothes hanging loose on his frame, visible evidence of his ongoing struggle. Maeve, my mother, stepped forward to embrace me, but I took a step back, maintaining my distance. "Let's sit down," I said calmly. "We have a lot to discuss." Once we were all seated, I placed my leather portfolio on the coffee table and extracted several documents. "Before I start, I want to be clear about something." I began, making eye contact with each of them. "I'm not here for apologies or excuses. I'm here because you've left me with a financial and legal disaster that needs resolving." I turned to Tyler first. "I've spoken extensively with financial fraud investigators and the district attorney's office. They estimate that the identity theft and fraud committed using my information would likely result in 3 to 5 years of prison time for all three of you, given the amount stolen and the premeditated nature of the crime." Tyler blanched, his hands trembling. My parents exchanged alarmed glances. "Now here's what's going to happen," I continued, pushing the first document forward. "This is a formal agreement drafted by my attorney outlining the full restitution plan. The entire $215,000 plus an additional $45,000 to cover my legal fees, credit repair services, and lost business opportunities. A total of $260,000 will be repaid to me within 30 days. 30 days, my father sputtered. "Maeve, that's impossible. We don't have liquid assets of that magnitude immediately available." "Then liquidate what you do have," I replied evenly. "Sell the vacation property in Vermont. Use your retirement accounts. Borrow from your hospital colleagues. I don't care how you get it, but the clock starts today." I pushed forward the second document. "This is a notarized confession detailing exactly what the three of you did, with dates, account numbers, and specific actions taken. Each of you will sign this. I'll keep it in a secure location with instructions for it to be delivered to the authorities if any future attempts are made to use my identity or if the restitution payment is not made in full." My mother gasped. You want us to sign a confession that could send us to prison. How can you ask that of your own family? I met her gaze steadily, the same way you decided to commit fraud against your own daughter. For a moment, the only sound was the ticking of the antique grandfather clock in the corner, a wedding gift to my parents, 35 years ago now, bearing witness to the unraveling of the family it had kept time for. There's more, I said, presenting the third document. This is a formal agreement that you will all seek professional help. Dad and Mom, you'll attend family therapy to address the enabling behaviors that contributed to this situation. Tyler, you'll complete your current rehabilitation program and commit to a 2-year aftercare plan, including regular addiction counseling and financial management courses. Tyler looked up, his eyes red-rimmed. I'm already getting help, Maeve. I'm doing everything I can. And that's the bare minimum expected, I replied, unmoved. But this isn't just about your gambling addiction. It's about the family dynamic that allowed you to believe your problems were more important than my future. I placed the final document on the table. This last one is personal. It's a commitment that all three of you will tell the complete truth about what happened to our extended family and close friends in the community. No more hiding behind the perfect Caldwell family image. No more secrets. This demand elicited the strongest reaction. My father stood up abruptly, his face flushed. That's going too far, he said firmly. What happened was wrong, yes, but it's private family business. There's no need to broadcast our mistakes and ruin our standing in this community. I stood as well, matching his stance. That standing is based on a lie. The respected surgeon and his charitable wife who raised such accomplished children while secretly committing fraud against one of them to cover up for another. The community deserves to know who they're really inviting into their homes and putting on their charity boards. I paused, looking at their shocked faces, and felt a momentary pang of doubt. Was I pushing too far? Destroying too much? But then I remembered the crushing feeling when my loan was denied, the hours spent untangling their deliberate fraud, the casual way they had sacrificed my future. Sometimes the most painful moments force us to make the hardest choices. What would you do if your family betrayed you like this? Would you protect the people who hurt you, or would you stand up for yourself, even if it meant losing everything familiar? If you're still with me on this journey, hit that like button and let me know in the comments if you think I made the right choice with what happens next. You have 48 hours to sign these documents, I concluded, gathering my portfolio. If you refuse or if you attempt to contact me, except through my attorney during these 48 hours, I will go directly to the police with everything I've discovered. And believe me, I have copies of all the evidence needed for them to press charges immediately. I turned to leave, but my mother's broken voice stopped me. How did we get here? She whispered, tears streaming down her face. How did our family come to this? I looked back at them, this trio of people I had loved unconditionally for my entire life. People who had shattered that same unconditional love without hesitation when it served their purposes. We got here one choice at a time, I answered quietly. Every time you chose Tyler over everything else. Every time you decided that the family image was more important than the family reality. Every time you convinced yourselves that using me was justified because I was the responsible one who could handle it. I opened the front door, feeling the warm spring air on my face, a stark contrast to the cold emptiness inside me. 48 hours, I reminded them, and walked out of my childhood home, unsure if I would ever return. As I drove back to the hotel, my phone exploded with messages from all three of them, pleading, arguing, bargaining. I silenced it and focused on the road ahead, both literally and figuratively. The next 2 days were the longest of my life. I worked remotely from my hotel room, trying to concentrate on my remaining client projects while the fate of my family and my finances hung in the balance. I went for long walks through town, seeing familiar faces who greeted me warmly, unaware of the implosion happening behind closed doors. Exactly 47 hours after I had delivered my ultimatum, My father appeared at my hotel room door, a large envelope in his hands and defeat in his eyes. "It's all signed," he said simply. "We'll have the money within the 30-day time frame. And we'll abide by all the other conditions too." I took the envelope without inviting him in. "Thank you." He lingered in the hallway, looking suddenly old and vulnerable. "Maeve, when this is all settled, is there any chance we can rebuild some kind of relationship? Your mother is devastated. We know we made terrible mistakes, but we do love you." I considered his question carefully. "I don't know, Dad. Trust isn't just broken, it's shattered. Maybe someday, but not soon, and never in the same way." He nodded sadly, accepting my answer. "For what it's worth, I'm sorry. Not just for what we did, but for how it revealed who we've become. I don't recognize myself in any of this, and that's the most frightening part." As he walked away down the hotel corridor, I felt no triumph, no vindication, only a profound sadness for what had been lost and could never be fully recovered. The family I had known was gone forever. What might rise from its ashes remained to be seen. I had won this battle for accountability, but the war for healing had only just begun. True to their word, my parents liquidated assets and delivered the full restitution amount within 3 weeks. A cashier's check for $260,000 handed to me by my father in Diane's office with the attorney as witness. The money was immediately used to pay off the fraudulent loans, clear my name legally, and begin rebuilding my credit. The financial wound, while deep, was on its way to healing. The emotional damage, however, proved far more resistant to repair. Word of the Caldwell family's fall from grace spread through Ridgefield like wildfire. My parents, honoring our agreement, disclosed the truth to immediate family members and close friends. But in a small town where reputation is currency, such secrets rarely stay contained. My father's hospital colleagues began treating him differently. Though no formal actions were taken against his medical license, invitations to speak at conferences dwindled, and he was quietly removed from consideration for the chief of surgery position he had been pursuing. My mother resigned from her chairwoman positions at various charities, citing personal reasons, but the whispers followed her through the grocery store aisles and at the country club. I received a tearful call from my Aunt Patricia, my mother's sister. "How could you do this to your parents?" she demanded. "Making them humiliate themselves in front of everyone. They made a mistake trying to help your brother. Haven't they suffered enough? They committed federal crimes against me," I reminded her calmly. "And they're facing social embarrassment, not prison, which is far less than the legal system would have imposed." Other relatives took different sides. My father's brother, Uncle James, reached out with surprising support. "I've watched Richard and Eleanor enable Tyler's worst behaviors for years," he confided. "Maybe this wake-up call was necessary for all of them." Meanwhile, I threw myself into rebuilding my business plan. With my finances restored and my credit slowly recovering, I leased a small office space in a different part of Boston and began reconnecting with potential clients. Some had moved on during my months of crisis, but others remained interested in my vision for sustainable marketing solutions. 3 months after our confrontation, I received an unexpected visit at my new office from Abigail, who had concluded her European tour and returned stateside. "This place has potential," she observed, running her hand along the exposed brick wall. "Very practical, but with character." We embraced, and I felt tears threatening. Abigail had been my rock through this entire ordeal, offering unwavering support from afar. "How was the family dinner last night?" I asked. Abigail had mentioned she would be visiting our parents, the first formal family gathering since everything had happened. She sighed, settling into one of my client chairs. "Uncomfortable." Mom barely spoke. "Dad tried too hard. Tyler was the most genuine I've seen him in years. His program seems to be working. He's 4 months sober now." "Good for him," I said, meaning it despite everything. "He asked about you." They all did, Abigail said cautiously. Tyler especially wanted me to tell you he's working on a proper amends as part of his recovery program, but he's respecting your request for space. I nodded, unsure how to feel about that. Part of me wanted to hold on to my anger. It had been a shield protecting me from the pain of betrayal. But I couldn't deny that a tiny piece of me missed them, or at least who I thought they had been. They've sold the house. Abigail continued, watching my reaction carefully. It was too big for them anyway, they said, but I think they couldn't bear the memories. They've bought a condo half the size on the other side of town. The news hit me harder than expected. Our childhood home, with its sprawling yard where we'd built snowmen and the attic where we'd played during rainstorms, gone. Dad's talking about early retirement, Abigail added. And Mom's drinking is concerning. She tries to hide it, but I noticed. I absorbed this information with a complicated mix of emotions, satisfaction that they were facing real consequences, guilt over those same consequences, and a persistent ache for the family we had lost. Are you saying I should forgive them? I asked, a slight edge in my voice. Abigail shook her head. I would never tell you what to do. You were the one directly hurt by their actions. I'm just giving you the full picture so you can make your own decisions. In the weeks that followed, my business began to take root and grow. I hired 2 part-time employees and secured a major contract with a sustainable clothing company expanding into the Northeast market. Professionally, I was finding my footing again, but personally, I remained adrift. I dated occasionally, but found it difficult to trust. I made new friends in Boston, but held them at arm's length. The betrayal had changed me in fundamental ways I was still discovering. 6 months after the confrontation, I received a letter from Tyler. Unlike my parents, who had sent numerous emotional emails and voicemails that I mostly ignored, Tyler had respected my boundaries until now. The letter was handwritten, 12 pages long, detailing his addiction journey, his shameful actions, and his commitment to making genuine amends. I don't expect forgiveness, he wrote toward the end. I'm not even asking for it. What I did, what we all did to you, was unforgivable. But I want you to know that your courage in standing up to us saved my life. Before you forced us all to face reality, I was drowning and dragging everyone down with me. Now I have 6 months of sobriety, a job at a medical research facility, not patient care. I'm not ready for that responsibility yet, and I'm facing each day honestly for the first time in years. Whatever you decide about our relationship going forward, I owe you that truth. I read the letter 3 times, trying to reconcile this vulnerable, accountable version of Tyler with the entitled brother I'd known. People could change. I certainly had. The question was whether our family relationships could evolve into something new and healthier, or if too much damage had been done. During this period of uncertainty, my business continued to flourish. The Sustainable Clothing Company campaign was featured in a national marketing magazine, bringing attention to my fledgling agency. New clients reached out, attracted to both our creative approach and our ethical stance. I hired 2 more full-time employees and moved to a larger office space. You should be proud, Diane told me during our final meeting as attorney and client. Many people would have been destroyed by what happened to you. Instead, you've rebuilt and thrived. I had no choice, I replied, but she shook her head. There are always choices, Maeve. You chose resilience and accountability over victimhood and denial. That's rarer than you think. Her words stayed with me as I drove to Ridgefield one crisp fall day 7 months after everything had shattered. I hadn't planned this trip, had woken that morning with no intention of seeing my parents, but something pulled me toward my hometown, perhaps a need for closure, or maybe the first tentative step toward something new. I found myself parking outside my parents' new condo, a modern building nothing like our family home. After sitting in my car for 20 minutes gathering courage, I finally approached their door and knocked. The woman who answered barely resembled my mother, thinner, grayer, with none of her former polished perfection. When she saw me, her hand flew to her mouth. "Maeve," she whispered, as if I were an apparition. "Hi, Mom," I said, my voice steady despite the storm of emotions inside. "I thought maybe we could talk." My mother's hands trembled as she made tea, the porcelain cups clinking against their saucers. The condo was immaculate but impersonal, lacking the generational artwork and family photographs that had adorned our family home. It struck me as a physical manifestation of our current reality, a clean, empty slate with no clear indication of what might be built upon it. "Your father will be devastated he missed you," she said, setting the tea service on the glass coffee table. "He's at a medical conference in Chicago. His last one before retirement next month." I nodded, noting how she nervously straightened the already perfect alignment of cups and spoons. The Eleanor Caldwell I knew had always managed social situations with effortless grace. This anxious woman seemed like a stranger. "You look well," she offered tentatively. "I've seen the articles about your marketing agency online. The sustainable clothing campaign was brilliant." I was surprised she'd been following my career. "Thank you. It's going better than I expected, actually." An uncomfortable silence settled between us, filled with 7 months of unspoken words. Finally, my mother set down her untouched tea. "Why did you come today, Maeve?" she asked quietly. "Not that I'm not grateful I've prayed for this moment, but after all this time." It was a fair question, one I'd been asking myself during the entire drive here. "I'm not entirely sure," I admitted. "I think I needed to see for myself what's happened. To all of us." My mother's eyes filled with tears. "What's happened is that we destroyed our family with our choices. Your father and I have had to face some difficult truths about ourselves, how we parented, the favoritism we showed, the values we thought we had, versus the ones we actually demonstrated through our actions." Her candor surprised me. The mother I knew would have minimized, deflected, preserved the family image at all costs. "We're in therapy, both individually and as a couple," she continued. "It's been illuminating, painful but necessary." "And the drinking?" I asked directly, remembering Abigail's concern. She flinched but answered honestly. 90 days sober as of last week. It became clear I was using it to avoid facing what we'd done. Your father finally confronted me about it after I missed a family therapy session with Tyler. We talked for over 2 hours, covering territory that was sometimes raw, occasionally hopeful. I learned that my father had taken full responsibility with his medical colleagues rather than letting rumors dictate the narrative. It had cost him professionally, but earned him unexpected respect from certain quarters. Tyler was indeed 8 months sober, working at a research foundation and living in a modest apartment in Danbury. He attended Gamblers Anonymous meetings 3 times weekly and had become a mentor to newer members. "He doesn't blame you, you know," my mother said. "For any of it. He says what you did was the wake-up call he needed." "I didn't do it for him," I replied, more sharply than intended. "We know that," she acknowledged. "You did it for yourself, as you should have. But the ripple effects have forced changes that were long overdue for all of us." When I finally stood to leave, my mother reached for my hand, but stopped short of taking it, respecting the boundaries I'd established. "Maeve, I know trust can't be rebuilt overnight, if ever, but I hope someday you might be willing to try family therapy with us. Not to excuse what happened, but to perhaps find a way forward, whatever that might look like." I made no promises, but agreed to think about it. As I drove back to Boston that evening, I reflected on how different this interaction had been from what I'd anticipated. There had been no manipulation, no guilt-tripping, no attempt to minimize their actions. Instead, I'd seen genuine accountability and painful growth. 2 weeks later, I met Tyler for coffee at a neutral location halfway between our homes. The conversation was awkward but surprisingly authentic. The entitled golden boy was gone, replaced by a humbled man doing the hard work of recovery. I'll be making financial amends to you for the rest of my life, he told me seriously. Not just the money itself, which I've started repaying to mom and dad, but for the opportunities you lost, the trust that was broken. I've rebuilt, I assured him. My business is doing well. That's because of who you are, not because what we did wasn't devastating, he countered. I'll never stop being sorry, Maeve. Slowly, cautiously, new family dynamics began to emerge from the ashes of our old patterns. My father and I had lunch, once-a-month conversations that started stiffly but gradually found a careful rhythm. My mother and I exchanged weekly emails, a safer distance that allowed for reflection between communications. Tyler and I occasionally met for coffee, our relationship transforming into something unrecognizable from our childhood roles, but perhaps healthier in its painful honesty. 1 year after the confrontation that had shattered the Caldwell family facade, we attempted our first holiday gathering at Abigail's apartment in New York. It was nothing like the lavish celebrations of the past. The conversation sometimes halted awkwardly. Old tensions occasionally flared. But there were also moments of genuine connection and even tentative laughter. As we prepared to leave, my father pulled me aside. I want you to know something, he said, his voice thick with emotion. Despite everything, watching you stand up for yourself, rebuild your life, and set proper boundaries has made me prouder than anything else you've ever done. It took tremendous courage I wish I'd had much earlier in life. I didn't know how to respond to this unexpected declaration, so different from the achievement-focused praise of my childhood. I'm still figuring out who I am, beyond the family dynamics we created, I admitted. Who Maeve is when she's not being the responsible one, or the victim, or even the one who fought back. He nodded in understanding. I think we're all doing that in our way. Finding out who we really are underneath the roles we played for so long. As I drove back to Boston that night, I reflected on the strange journey of the past year. The family I had grown up with was gone forever, its perfect image shattered beyond repair. In its place was something more fragile, but also more authentic, a work in progress with no guarantees. My marketing agency had expanded to 7 employees with a growing reputation for innovative campaigns for sustainable businesses. I had recently started dating someone who knew my full story and respected the boundaries and trust issues that came with it. My credit score had recovered to 780, and I had finally secured the business loan I had originally sought before discovering my family's betrayal. The path forward wasn't clear or certain. Trust once broken so profoundly could never be fully restored to its original state. But perhaps I thought that wasn't the point. Perhaps trust, like family itself, needed to be reconstructed in a new form, eyes wide open with clear boundaries and accountability built into its very foundation. I had survived the unimaginable. More than survived, I had rebuilt and thrived. Whatever came next, I would face it on my own terms, never again allowing anyone to sacrifice my future for their convenience or comfort. Some betrayals can never be truly forgiven, but with time, honesty, and genuine accountability, they can sometimes be transformed into the painful catalyst for necessary change. It's been 2 years since I discovered my parents' betrayal and set in motion the events that transformed our family forever. My marketing agency now occupies an entire floor of an eco-friendly building in downtown Boston with 15 employees and a client waiting list. I recently purchased my first home, a townhouse with a garden terrace where I grow herbs and flowers, small living things I nurture daily, a reminder of my own growth from devastation. My family relationships exist in a new reality, fragile, cautious, but surprisingly authentic. We gather for holidays and occasional celebrations, the conversations sometimes still awkward, but free from the lies and manipulations that once defined us. Tyler remains sober, working steadily to repay his debts, both financial and emotional. My parents have settled into retirement with a humility and self-awareness they never possessed during their years of community prominence. The perfect Caldwell family is gone. In its place is something imperfect but real, people who hurt each other terribly but chose the harder path of accountability and change rather than denial and pretense. As for me, I'm neither the dutiful daughter nor the vengeful victim. I'm simply Maeve, still discovering who that is and what she wants from life beyond the shadows of family expectations and betrayals. If you followed my story to this end, I want to thank you for witnessing this journey. Family betrayal leaves scars that never completely fade, but sharing these experiences reminds us we're not alone. Has someone in your family ever betrayed your trust, and did karma eventually catch up with them? Share your own family justice stories in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please hit that subscribe button and like this video. It helps more people find these real-life lessons about standing up for yourself even when it's the hardest thing you've ever done. Remember, sometimes the family we choose is more loyal than the one we're born into. Until next time, this is Maeve, signing off and wishing you the strength to create boundaries that protect your peace.